What's up, everybody? Do you have problems that don't seem to go away? Are there parts of your life that just suck and don't seem to be getting any better? Well, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about why facing your problems is exceedingly important and actually pretty much makes your problems disappear. So, but this is the Existential Stoic podcast. My name is Randy. That's Danny. What's up, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
So today we are talking about facing your problems. Now, I mean, I've had problems previously. Have you ever had any problems in life?
Yeah, I think I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So pretty much we're like everybody,
we're
pretty much like everybody out there listening. We all have
Yeah.
problems. There are things that are happening that maybe we don't like. There are things that aren't happening that we would like to happen. And then, relationships are always just bound to have problems in them. So I was thinking about how doing an episode on facing our problems would be great, because I would say with my problems, I spend 99% of the time running away from them or not facing them.
Yeah, totally. Dude, I think that's the funny part. It's like it's really actually comical that we do this all the time, right? It's like, it doesn't matter what the stress is, whether it's like a debt, building up, whether it's like a relationship problem, whatever. We just try to ignore it and hope that it will somehow magically like go away. I don't know what we think is going to happen, but it's like, it's just really funny. But then once we start addressing them, facing them, turning towards them, admitting them, they actually start to go away and things start to get better. But like, we will spend the longest time not doing anything. And it's really funny, or trying to get help, or trying to do stuff, but not really towards that issue, right? Not fixing that issue, but really other things. And it's really, we never admit our major problems in our lives, I think. And relationships are tough too, because they're always like, it's dealing with other people. There's always a potential wealth of issues that can arise there, and just miscommunication.
Oh yeah,
I think that happens all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so like I know for a long time I had problems with money, and it took a good friend of mine saying, you're terrible with money. And like I got offended. I knew I was bad, but he was like, no, you're like terrible with money. And I got a little bit offended, and I was like, oh, I got to change that. Oh my goodness. And so it was something where like I had student loan debts, and being young, not learning anything about money growing up.
Yeah.
Like, I spent, I don't know, 10, 20 years running from it. I was thinking that I could out earn my stupidity, which
right. Yeah.
I'll give you a little hint. You can't. And
it's funny though. I think that that situation, because I was there, been there too, and I think part of it too is that you also have, like, at least in my mind, part of it was like you said, like that idea of out earning. Like, well, eventually I'll make more. Eventually I'll make enough, and then all this will just go away. It's like I don't have to deal with it now. And like we tell ourselves these weird things to try and convince ourselves that we can just keep doing what we're doing. We don't have to make any changes, and eventually somehow it'll all fall in place. And like, I don't know. I always wondered if part of that was built on the idea that, like, when you take out those student loans and stuff, like, it's like the idea is you will eventually, hopefully, make enough to pay this back, even though like that's totally,
well, that's how they sell it to you, certainly.
Yeah,
but the
exactly,
truth is you never will.
No, and like, so in your head, right, you're thinking that way. So you're thinking like, oh, I just got to get the right job, the next promotion or whatever. But at the same time, if you're if you're spending like that, you're really never going to get it there. And it's like just not admitting to yourself like the kind of cycle that you're in. It's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's super common. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. So like I specifically remember when my friend told me, he's like, you're terrible with money. And I was offended. I was like, oh, how could he say that? But then on the other hand, I was like, oh, he's so right. And so I was like,
I have no money.
I was like, okay, worse than I have no money. I have like $250,000 in debt. And so like it made me like reevaluate what I was doing. And here's the cool thing was that like there came a day not long after he said that where like I remember I drew like a literal line in the sand, like in my mind. I was like, okay, that's it. Like, I'm not getting any worse from here. It's only going to get better from here. And I literally remember that. And I remember like seeing this mountain of debt that I had and just like moving it away. Okay. And like, yeah. And so I started just taking steps and just working at it and in the direction that I wanted to go. And like, it's literally like I was avoiding looking at the debt for 10 years. And then as soon as I started looking at it, it started shrinking. Like it couldn't stand me actually looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's funny. It's like, it's like once I mean, I think that's the interesting thing is like once we really do turn towards anything, admit it, and start taking positive steps, like we can address almost anything. And there's always like we can always improve our situation. And like what you said too, like you're not going to let this get any worse is a great way to look at it because then it will get better. But it's funny how we just like we refuse to admit it to ourselves. And because denial is, it seems so much easier at the time, right? It does. It seems like, you can keep doing whatever you're doing, but like really all you're doing is making it so that you can never move forward. And so things are always out of your control rather than being in your control. I remember too, man, like I remember literally being in a graduate program and deciding finally that like I didn't want to do this anymore and just stopping. And it was a hard decision because like, I'd spent a lot of time. I had some money that I had taken out in respect to that, but not a lot, thankfully. But like, it was just, one of those decisions that was like very difficult, but it was causing me a ton of stress. I was ignoring it for a long time. And like, that wasn't helping because I was still just basically not then allowing myself to do other stuff that I should be doing or wanted to do. Right. And I think a lot of times when we do this sort of denial, we're really like making ourselves sort of frozen in place almost, right? Like whatever situation we're in, we're like perpetuating it and that's it rather than trying to make it better.
And at that time you like knew what to do, you just weren't doing it, right?
Yeah, totally. Because I just didn't want to address it. It just, because it's like, and it's a lot of things, right? Like, money troubles or whatever, like not wanting to pursue something that we're pursuing. There's that social pressure to like that feeling of like, oh, maybe I'll let people down or whatever, or what about what other people expect or think, or maybe my own expectation, whatever, and like what will I do after if I changed to something else that I want to do? How will I make it? That fear of new things, it's all there. And it's hard to sort of, I think that's part of turning and facing our problems. But I think we make it so much worse in our heads than it actually is. That's the other thing. And, I think once we really do turn and face them, it's like they become real, tangible, and not as scary as we make them out to be.
And I mean, that's a good point that we make it a lot worse in our head than it could be. Because like one exercise that we've talked about previously is just figuring out like what's the worst case scenario and what's the best case scenario. And then if both of those happen, how can I recover from it? So like I remember when I was like trying to figure out how to get out of debt and doing all of this stuff, like I wrote down what's the worst case scenario, and I started laughing after I did it because the worst case scenario was actually something that I'd totally be cool living. Like I was like totally broke. I'd be living in a homeless shelter. I'd have to spend all day in the library, and then I was like, wait, I get to spend all day in the library? This is awesome. Sign me up.
I can make that.
So, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So like once you confront those things, it's kind of like shockingly funny that we blow these things out of proportion to a way where we think we can't handle it, so we can't even bother looking at it.
Oh yeah, and it's like it's funny, like you mentioned, like student loan. Those are overwhelming. They are, especially like when you're facing it, you're not making enough to even pay it and all. And it's funny because I think for a lot of us too, like you end up making every part of trying to address it hard. Like you won't even check the website to see how much what the situation is. You won't even like open letters, and it's like you just compound you're just ignoring it, right? And then you let your mind kind of just wander, your imagination kind of go wild rather than like actually looking at the facts of the situation. And I think it's so helpful. It's so funny though, but it is an interesting thing that we do because we all do it, and it really does not make it easier.
Well, like another thing that I thought of while we were talking here was like people who like, but I have no control over this stuff. Like I grew up from a poor family and I just didn't have the opportunities other people had. I'm just not as smart as other people. Like things never go my way. And so like the whole another part of facing your problems is accepting the responsibility that you have in the situation. So like no matter what's going on in life, there's at least some responsibility that you can have in your life. And the more responsibility you're willing to take on, probably the more you're able to change your life.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the more you're able to live, I mean, the more it is your life, literally, right? The more you're accepting that fact that this is my life and this is, I'm going to make of it what I will. I mean, I think that's a good point. It is funny because it's running away from responsibility or not admitting it. And I think you get in that, the other dangerous thing too is when we ignore or don't face our problems, you get in that victim sort of mentality, the blaming circumstance, blaming everything else. But you've never really, if you look at yourself, you should be blaming yourself for never really trying to take that action either, never trying to address it, right? Because that's kind of taking that first step towards maybe you can do this. Maybe you can make this different or better or change your situation because we all can. Yeah, I think that's a really good, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I had
it's
another
really interesting.
uh,
Okay, yeah.
I had another problem recently. It was like a relationship problem. And so like this person, I was kind of a jerk. Sometimes I can be a jerk when I think I'm right. I would call myself an A
Oh,
word.
yeah.
We're a publicly syndicated show, so I'm not going to call myself that. And so like,
Yeah.
we hadn't spoken for a while, and I mean, this was a good friend, and I felt guilty about it. I missed spending time with this person, and I was a jerk. And then, there was the victim me being like, well, how come I always have to say I'm sorry? Like how come it's always me who has to
Yeah.
apologize? And so like I'm going through this whole thing, like being like, they should contact me first. I'm gonna wait until they contact me. And
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
yeah, so like it was, for a couple of weeks, it was just like on my mind. It was causing me stress. I wasn't happy because of it. And then finally, I was just like, okay, suck it up, be a grown up, and let's deal with this. And things got a lot better from there. It was actually like almost instantaneously, like weeks of torture and stress, and then
Yeah.
literally the day I decided to call up and say I'm sorry, it was cool.
You know, you make a good point though, because like I do the same thing. I can be kind of an asshole too, and I think I'm right. It's like, and if we don't catch ourselves in those moments, you just make things worse, and then you have your whole pride issues and stuff like that, right? Everybody's got that. But it's funny because I think whenever you have something like, whenever there's a problem on your mind like that, and that's a good example, right? Or like, debt, whatever, relationships, those things will sit on your mind. And if something's like that, it's going to forever cause you stress until you deal with it. So it's a good indicator that you should just face it and deal with it, right? At that moment, right when you realize that every day this is going to occupy so much mental space, time, energy, and just essentially like every day is going to be colored by that, right? By that, you know, pressure, stress, worry, concern, whatever that's on your mind. And I think once you turn and face it, it goes away because now even if it's not the best right away, the moment you address it, it will get better. I think that's an important thing too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good example though.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, I mean, in essence, we don't need to beat a dead horse too much, but the essence is like whatever
Yeah.
problems you have in your life, just face them.
Yeah.
Or else, I
Yeah.
mean, or the other thing is you just choose to have those problems forever. Like, it's like,
Or, well, yeah, right. You choose to have them forever. Or if it, in certain circumstances, I think you can also, part of facing them is just choosing to let them go too. Sometimes it's just letting something go in your life that you shouldn't be doing, right? Like, and I think those are kind of like that is the thing to do because you're taking control, you're living your life, right? You're being proactive in your life. That's what matters.
absolutely. Yeah. So anything else you want to say on this topic?
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a
Yeah.
good short, direct one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely worthwhile. And I would I would challenge everyone to be a little bit more courageous than normal. Because chances are if you have problems that are bothering you, you know what to do about it, number one. You know what you should do,
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
not doing it. And you probably kind of really want something to happen from it. So like be a little bit more courageous than normal. You might just get what you want.
Yeah, I know, right? How scary would that be if your life was actually going the way you wanted?
Absolutely.
Ah, man.
Yeah. All right. So that is it for episode 133 of the Existential Stoic podcast. Make sure to
Sweet.
listen to us, like, share, subscribe. We will see you guys later on in the week. I'm Randy. That's Danny. See you later, Danny.
Later, Randy.